That makes me think about competence builds confidence. And without that competence in the structure, then you're just going to go into it and then you're going to feel that lack of confidence in the field when it's too late.
People
And
do that all the time. I talk to people every day that they are not confident in their operation. Like they do not feel they're operating with excellence because they do not feel competent on many different levels, not just with the hardware, not just with the client, not just with the subject matter, not just where they are. It's a mix of all of those things. And that's a problem. So how do you fix that? Drones are just going to be flying around. So it's going to be part of the normal. It was probably freaking weird when cars started driving around.
right.
Weird when people are, I'm never going to get a computer or never going to get a smartphone, whatever. All those things are revolutionary. And today, they're commonplace. They're surrounding us all the time. Drones, I think, have very much the possibility to do that. And that's when we as an industry win.
Yeah, for sure. That's when they laughed at Bill Gates when he said that there's going to be a computer on everyone's desk. And they're like, dude, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Now it's, I've got like 4 within arm's reach.
Dude, I have one that I wear on my face.
What? You got a face computer.
Yeah, when I sleep with these on, I feel it in my brain.
Computer, wrist computer. I got a wallet computer. I got a phone computer.
So there's people out there that are flying drones and they're stuck at that $200 job rate, even sometimes $100 a job. What separates them from people that are making 6 figures in this industry flying a drone?
Man, it's a great question. So a lot of it's just going to be experience, but it's not just that. It's going to be experience and honestly, finding a niche plus partnerships. Now, let me divide those two things. Finding the niche is to be able to do anything really well, you have to specialize. So I view the drone industry in 3 distinct groups. You've got the basic drone services, like the $200 jobs. You have specialized services, and then you have enterprise services. Now, let's not talk about enterprise at this point. Let's talk about specialized services. Specialized services is still going to be something that your risks go up, your investments go up, your training goes up, all of your experience, and not necessarily experience, but all of those other things go up. But you're doing that in a small niche. Let's say, for example, you're doing just solar farms, or you're doing oil and gas for optical gas imaging, or you're just doing the one thing. You're not trying to find all the jobs in construction and utility and telecom. You're hunting and pecking. Now, people start there, and I highly recommend it. Start by doing all those drone aggregator jobs, the $200 jobs that make you drive 100 miles. Like, get some experience. Figure out if you want to do that ever again, or if you figure out a way to do it better. Now, so that's sort of piece one. Find your niche. The second piece is related to how do you go up a notch? That's really just going to be after you find your niche is you got to plug into a partnership. And what I mean by that is a lot of people treat drone jobs, especially at the lower level, as transactions. They're very transactional. I'm hiring a plumber. It's cool. I'm going to look and find some reviews, but honestly, at the end of the day, I just need someone to do that. Now, these services can be elevated, and so can the plumbing. Any of those jobs can be an elevated experience and more of a partnership than just a transaction, a simple transaction. So trying to migrate from a transaction where you're just talking about the sales and the tools and the capabilities to a partnership where you're talking about outcomes, you're talking about value, you're talking like those things. That's how you shift from basic to specialized and beyond.
If you were going to start back all over again, you had day one, you just got your 107, we're past the basics. And this actually should be something that you should be thinking about before you finish your 107 exam. But let's say you got certified now and you're in the commercial market. What would you do differently, knowing the landscape that we have, knowing the evolution of AI and autonomous driving vehicles? Maybe there's some small niches in there for data collection. How would you approach the industry differently?
I guess my answer is I would try to jump beyond what people are doing today. I'd be like, look, here's what's actually happening. If I was jumping in the market today, got my 107, and I had an idea of what was going on. I see what's happening in the news. I see what's happening and when news, more like drone news. I see what's happening with infrastructure. I see what's happening with technology and the integration of AI. I would be future forward and say, hey, you know what? I think I would really like, I see an opportunity, a service opportunity, a scalable service opportunity in drone docks. Like, I think that, look, it's cool. Like, it looks cool to me. I'm like, that is rad. I think that is awesome. I would dive, and I'm infinitely curious about it. So I really like the fact that I could be here in my office or wherever in the world, and I can control the drone. Okay. Or I could program a drone to do something. Every time I go somewhere, they're like, man, I just think, man, why do I have to drive there? Wouldn't it be better if there was a drone already here? Those sort of things are fascinating to me. And so is like real time analytics. I love my job right before this was time dominant intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, where we were literally on the plane and we were literally finding bad people doing bad things as we were flying over them.
Wow.
And we were literally sending that information in near real time to combatant commanders. And while we're still in the air, they were probably taking care of it. So I like that. I like that I want to take the gap and I want to put it to the edge. I want to say, hey, you know what? There's some even basic things, maybe even moderate, medium, and more moderate things that you can do with these computers that are literally sitting there. Just let them do it. The simple, and some of it's not even simple. Some of it's extremely useful. It's like simple, but not easy. There's a difference between the two. And I want the drone doing more, and I want to be able to control more. Like, I want to have multiple drones that are doing it. So I would focus on that. I'd be like, hey, you know what? I see this is becoming a thing. DFRs, drones first responders, sending out, they're being the guinea pigs here. But I'm like, look, I can see this for so many industries where it's like, hey, you know what? If you had a box just sitting there, because most of the people that are using the data, they're not drone operators. They're ologists, they're scientists, they're engineers. They really don't care how the data gets to them, as long as it gets to them when they want it and in the formats that they want, and everything meets their specs. They don't care if it was a person or if it was a box. So I like the box idea because I like sitting in my little man cave and doing all these types of things. Why do I have to go drive anywhere? I think in the future you won't have to. So that's where if I was starting today, this just for me, this is just for me personally, I would be double clicking and going deep into sort of real time and partnering for that, because a lot of people that are doing that really well, and combining that with drone docs. Like, I think those two things, dude, gangbusters in the future.
What you were talking about earlier is also a testament to how every job is different. Can you speak on that a little bit and how
Oh,
you
wow.
think how?
Absolutely. So even within a highly regimented, let's just throw out an example. Like you were just saying, examples, right? So we went to this past week, we were at a solar site. I was training a new franchisee in how to do solar analysis for one of our national accounts. Awesome. Great experience. I've done these several times before. Every single job is different, and not just in small ways, but in big ways too. So it's, look, I now have so many different the problem is there's too many variables. This is a multivariate problem that you can never ever have constants for. The only way to keep these things on guardrails are through checklists and experience. And not just checklists and experience, but checklist experience and like some flexibility, some flexible thinking, some adaptive thinking. You have to be, you can't do that adaptive thinking if you don't have the underlying knowledge to pull that from. You can't just make it up. Sometimes you can, but it doesn't always work out. Usually the success rate when you're just making it up is pretty poor. But like this particular job was like, look, there were particular arrays that we know based on this particular customer, if they have problems with their arrays and the sun tracking array, that they're going to have to redo that zone. Okay. They didn't know exactly which ones there were. So we did a first overview flight to figure out which ones they were. Okay, cool. We were just staying in touch and be like, hey, here's what's going on. We're feeling this one. This inverter is up. This inverter is down. We're working on this. We're seeing reflections when we're doing this. All right, we're going to increase the overlap. All of these things were not exactly what the recipe was. We had to change it just a little bit, not a lot, but not every recipe for a chicken parm is the same thing for a drone mission, man. You may have the same ingredients, but you're going to have to change some of the recipe. whether where you're operating, either as a slightly higher risk factor, slightly lower risk factor, a little bit more of an integrated customer, a slightly different, timeline, a slightly different access. There's just so many things that happen on each individual job. You have to have flexibility, but that flexibility is backed up by I have my checklists, I have all my equipment, I am fully prepared, I have backups. I know and I've done this before. So you have a little bit of confidence. So those sort of 5 things together can almost get you through almost any sort of job variation there is, as long as you've done it at least a few times. Like you've done it a couple times, you understand how this works. But even then, in almost any job, complacency kills. I still follow checklists, and it's so ridiculously important to follow checklists because if you don't, you miss something. And sometimes it's a little miss. Sometimes it's a big miss. Like sometimes it's a little miss. I'm going through the checklist. Da, 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 da. I didn't see how much space was left on the SD card. My drone's coming back, so I got to change the SD card. That's just wasting my time. If I would have seen that and knew that, and I know that, what, each one of these flights, each one of these missions is like 12 gigabytes, and I have 8 left. Okay, dumb. Change the SD card. Like these are little things that like maybe you're not nitpicking on your checklist, but maybe you should. Maybe you should. I can guarantee a fighter pilot, people with thousands, tens of thousands of hours, they still follow the checklist. They don't just make shit up because people's safety. And in this case, people's safety could be involved, but also not just your own safety and the safety of the environment you're working in, but you don't want to waste your own time. Wasting your time sucks. So really, it's just, look, you got to be able to make sure that you are structured and you have that sort of foundational knowledge to be adaptable to almost any situation, because no 2 jobs will be exactly the same. You can go next door. I did one school to another school. It was a few miles apart and it felt completely different, but almost nothing changed. On the surface, they were the same. From a deliverable standpoint, they were the same. Operationally, they couldn't have been more different. And you have to be able to adapt to those environments. And that's the thing that's really hard. But then another thing that I tell people, and this is equally important, people want to be like, okay, cool. So, because I have an analytical background, remote sensing and GIS. And one of the first things that you learn is you learn a basic process to do some of the basic stuff. Okay, cool. But then you start to learn, like you do in the thermography world and almost anything with analysis, once you understand the principles behind it, do it the way you want. There's 100 different ways to skin this cat. Do it the way that makes sense for you. The thing that actually makes it more memorable, that makes it easier, that makes more sense. All of those things, but as long as you're staying within those principles, laws, all of the things that you need to stay within to keep yourself safe, do what you need to do. So that also changes how you get it done. So you can detail out to the nth degree how you did something that may not work for anyone else. And that's okay. That's the one thing that I say to my students all the time. I think, look, there's no right way to do this. There is a wrong way to do it. And we're going to try to keep you from doing it the wrong way. But the way we keep you to do it the right way is not just getting reps in, because it's going to get repetitive. When you're doing that, some people get complacent, man. And you're like, wow, I've never missed that shot before. If you're playing basketball, I never missed a shot before. And you're like, man, I've made 500 in a row. Dude, that 500 first, as soon as someone talks about it or someone's talking about it, like you're going to miss it. It's like kickers in the NFL. Like they start talking about this is their blah, blah, blah kick without blah, blah. Yeah, they're going to miss that kick. Duh. So maybe. But the bottom line is you have to have flexible thinking. You have to be adaptive, but you only get that way with some foundational knowledge. It's the only way to get there.
When you're talking to students or just talking to any kind of drone operator, how do you prepare them to be able to set up a proposal that makes sense for bulk capture and to be able to build in these unknowns, or to have like your standard package and then all these other optional tag alongs? How do you structure that out if you don't know what you don't know?
Now I'm trying to break the mold on this a little bit. And what I mean by that is I think there needs to be way more value-based pricing in this industry. There are too many people operating hourly, too many people operating on a day rate, too many people operating. So there's nothing wrong with firm fixed price. That's actually a preferred method. But what goes into that? Let's break that down. So when I talk to people, I'm like, look, you're going to know what your costs are. You're going to have an idea, right? You're going to know what this job is going to make it worthwhile for you to do it. Okay, stop. Now, this is a partnership for yourself and the customer's perspective. What is it that you can offer them? What is it you can offer them that they're currently doing? So there's a difference, right? I know that they're doing something. I'll give you one example right out of my ebook, and it was a thermal commercial roof inspection. Okay, they were going to have to do it anyway. It was going to cost them probably $60,000 to do it. Their own manpower. They have to climbing gear, weight, all the insurance, workers' comp, all this other stuff, and then they have to take their workers away from whatever they were doing to then go do this. Okay, stop. $60,000. Okay, cool. So, what if I could do it for 30? Would that help you? And then that's a little bit of a value-based cost, a value-based sharing, a value share, mind you. Look, you know what? It's going to cost me $10,000 to do this job. I know that. My hard costs are this. I can do it in 6 days, not 6 weeks. Get this done in 6 days for you. I know what my hard costs are. I know what I'd like to pay myself. I know what I'd like to pay my students. Okay, cool. I have those hard costs. Great. Now let's talk about the gravy or the outcome-based pricing. Outcome-based pricing, value-based pricing, they're the same. Now let's say, for example, now I'm on your people. I know how much it was going to be a $60,000 job. Well, what if you gave me 5% of that? Keep 95% of the savings. It's going to cost me $10,000. It's going to cost you $60,000. Give me 5%, 10% of the savings. What is that? $2,500, $5,000?
Yeah, 5,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now that's not trading time for money. That is value to the customer and adding that to your firm fixed price. Don't call it a value share. They're not going to get that across any sort of accounting. You build it in. They know that it's value-based. And not only that, you can add in a little performance bonus. Oh, what if I get it done in 5 days? What if I add in additional things? Like the good thing about remote sensing is that it's not just singular use. You can use the same data for lots of different types of things. Okay, cool. So we're going to do a day flight. What can we do with a day flight? We're going to do a day flight of all the buildings. Okay, cool. What if we add in this? Incrementally, the time difference is very small. Okay, so now they're going to use it for this and this. Okay, that's a performance bonus. You know what? I'm not going to charge you for that time. I'm already using that time. I'm already going to do it. You're getting additional value out of it. So give me a performance bonus of, pick a percent, anywhere between, I don't know, 20% or of whatever the initial contract value is. You're now going to add that onto it. So now your margin just went from what? 10% to like 30% or more, 40% or more. That is how you specialize. That is how you price these things. It is not, this is what I'm going to charge you per day. Cool. If they want a day rate, awesome. I'm going to do all my math. I'm going to do my partnership thing, and I'm going to talk about all the good things that I'm saving them, and then I'm going to work backwards. And I'm going to say, okay, you want a day rate? Cool. It's this. What makes that up? It's this. It's not just me paying this per hour. It's all of these things that we already talked about, all this value that you've already agreed to based on either case studies or knowledge or just knowing what they're doing, knowing what their alternative is. So and not every industry has all these things, and that's fine. But in the ones that do, use it. Absolutely. Utility industry, telecom industry, roofing, solar, they all have methods of having to do this a different way. We're just augmenting or replacing that method. That means there was costs and time associated with it. Find out what those are. Know them. Understand them. Tailor them for your customer. Because you can't just use one number and go to all customers with it. That doesn't work. And you're only going to find that out if you have that conversation. But it's a value-based, outcome-based conversation. It's not dollars and cents. Don't even bring up dollars and cents yet. Not yours. Bring up theirs. Understand theirs first so that you can understand where they are, what's their frustration, how much they're paying for it, how much of a pain in the ass it is, and they'll tell you. If you ask them, they will absolutely tell you. That conversation is crucial for pricing. And if you don't have it, you're leaving so much money on the table. Just stay with basic services.
That makes me think about the phrase that dislike the most. Is when people say, "Oh, I can sell ice cream to an Eskimo."
Oh, get out of here.
You are literally selling somebody something that they do not want or need, and then you're just ruining it for that perception because then they're not gonna wanna be in that sales position and open up, and they have that fear of moving forward. So, yeah, I love what you're talking about with that because we wanna truly help our clients, and then the only way to do that is to understand what their day-to-day is. And then sometimes the things that you're just spitting out is just word salad. They're not listening to it because they don't even know the definitions. It doesn't impact their day-to-day, and it goes in through one ear and out the other. So that's
I love it when people are like, man, I can sell you the best, most highest accurate GPS RTK corrected orthomosaic. And they're like, I have no idea what you just said, and nor do I care. Please leave. It's different.
just wasting time.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. People aren't buying that. They're really
That client knows what they want because they're plugging in this data in a very specific way. But you're talking about 99% of clients that utilize drone data. It's a much different conversation.
absolutely. Here's a reality. The entire drone industry has only seen about 3% of its potential. That means there's a lot left. We're going to find use cases every day, stumble across them, happen across them. Like AXA, just look, it's just going to happen. We're not going to necessarily engineer it all, but it's just going to happen happenstance. And things are going to evolve with all the things that are happening. Oh, wow, now we have this. Oh, wow, now I could do this. Wow, I never thought about doing that. That was a really good idea. It's going to continue to evolve just like any other industry evolves. We're so close to the beginning. That's the exciting part, man. Sky's the limit. Quite literally, we have no idea what drones are going to be doing in the future. We know what they could do today, and that is in my opinion, still a very narrow scope.
How do you present those questions during those sales calls to be able to understand in a professional way? How do you bring up what does this cost you, client? How much am I
So
getting?
look, it's all look up, and you probably know this, but listeners, watchers, look up consultative selling. Look it up. It's a whole method. Solution selling, consultative selling. Take a look. It's more about becoming a trusted advisor than a salesperson. I am not a salesperson. I am terrible at sales, but I'm a good trusted advisor. People will buy from a trusted advisor so many times they don't even know that they're buying from you. Like I tell people all the time, look, man, I'm a scientist. I'm a sales guy. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And that's largely true. I really don't. Ask my wife. She'll absolutely tell you. I have no idea how to sell stuff. But I do know how to talk. I know how to talk to you to understand and just be curious. Be curious what your problems are, right? Understand. I'm genuinely curious what your operation is currently doing, where you're currently struggling. Let's talk about that. Then let's talk about in your ideal world, what would it look like? And then you know what? Let's see if we can get you incrementally closer to that. That's it.
When you just narrow in on one, you learn their language, you learn what they care about. It's going to simplify that sales process too. And then you can also scale out from there because then they know that you're vested into their interest. You're not just trying to sell them another drone flight.
And you get the other piece of that is you really get real feedback. You get real answers. You get an inventory, a backlog, a knowledge base that you're acquiring yourself. And that becomes your value. That by itself becomes your value. If you're trying to do that in too many different industries, your knowledge bases are going to grow much slower. If you pick one, you can go deeper much faster, right? There's a lot of people in this industry that are a mile wide and an inch thick. Those people are hunting and pecking, and they're probably not going to end up doing very well. They may be on the higher end of basic drone services. Good for them. They're not going to be the ones that are ridiculously successful. The ridiculously successful ones are the ones that have niched down. They have specialized knowledge. They have good client engagements and partnerships. They have a big network of people. They potentially have their own contractors that they're helping. They have their own mentors and mentees. Like they're really sort of working it from a real market leadership position, right? Even if they're one person, they're out there killing it. Like some of these people are like drone mercenaries that are just absolutely crushing it out there, but they're niching down and they're staying specialized. And some of them are working in a few different realms, but they're still pretty narrow. So take the broad and wide jobs at the beginning of your career so you can understand what it is that you want to do. Some people like find telecom and be like, dude, I never want to do this ever again. This is terrible. Not just from the pay, but just from a work perspective. You want me to do what? No, I don't want to do that. Or some of the insurance jobs, you're like, you're going to go in, you're going to go inside the house, you're going to crawl underneath, you're going to take a picture. You're like, I don't want to do that either. Okay, cool. Find out what you want to do. And then once you find it, you'll know, people will know. They'll be like, man, this is great. I could do this every day, no problem. People, most operators that have been around for long enough have that eureka moment. They're like, this is sweet. This is nice. For me, it was like ag and solar. I loved that stuff. It just took me out to the middle of nowhere. I could build my little drone glamping thing. I'd do some of my own cooking and tailgating. I could take a nap in my car if I want. Like all of these things, like I liked that. For me, like I just personally liked it. And I found the work that they're doing, not just the conditions, the work that they're actually trying to do, it made sense. And I could dive deeper. I was curious to dive deeper. Like I wanted to know more. So for the drone operators out there that are trying to figure out what they're trying to do, I would just, one piece of advice, when you're doing those mile wide, inch deep jobs, find which one, when you're doing it, you start asking questions. You were like, wow, what is it that they're using this for? What is it that people are actually doing with this? What are some of the analytical things that they're doing with this that are actually adding value? How are they using this? If you find yourself asking those particular questions and then some, you might have stumbled upon a niche, because a lot of the commoditized work, people don't ask questions about. It's simple. It's easy. It makes sense. Like it's not something that's brain surgery to try to figure out. It's, wow, yeah, that's just really easy. And that makes sense. And those things are becoming commoditized quicker. Maybe you don't want to be there. Maybe you want to figure out a way to be on the other end where you're commanding ever higher prices. That's where you want to be.
So when drone operators are trying to scale their business, what are the biggest mistakes that you see them do? Whether it's marketing to the wrong audience, you touched on that, or it could be operational and coming down to the actual conversations where they're negotiating their work.
I actually had this conversation this morning. So, question. A lot of drone operators are excellent operators. They are terrible salespeople. And what do I mean by that? Look, Google ads are going to get you so far. Working with drone aggregator is going to get you so far. But what's going to really differentiate you? That's going to be a relationship you have with a customer that wants to champion you and their company. That's the biggest thing. Now, how do you get that? You get it through networking. How do you network? You do that through informational interviews. You do that through LinkedIn. You do it through adding value, or at least being inquisitive, being curious. If you get someone, and I say this to my nonprofit students as well, I literally said this earlier today to one of my students, look, you may be terrible at networking, but like what we're doing right now is networking. You're asking me questions. I'm giving you answers. And people talking about what they're doing. They like talking about, you're not asking for anything. You're not saying, hey man, I need a job. Hey man, you really need me to do blah, blah, blah. You're not a used car salesman. You're trying to add a service. And if it's not for them, it's not for them. But you're not going to get there, because here's one of the things that I've seen over and over and over and over again. Drone operators will go in and be like, I can give you an orthomosaic with my drone. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, go pound sand. Like they have no idea what the hell. Most of them don't have any idea what you just said or what it is that they care about. They don't care about geotiffs. They don't care about projections. They don't like you're now talking megapixels. They're like, dude, go away. Like, cool. They can't value it. They have no idea what you just said. Now you start speaking their language. Now I had 2 people last night after the webinar say, hey, I'm getting ready to talk. My buddy has a construction company. My buddy's buddy has a blah, blah. They're getting warm leads. They're getting a warm referral, warm introduction into these companies. And they're like, what do I say? What is the value here? I'm like, dude, look, like we were talking about, you are saving them time and money. Now, how? You are not just providing images. Anyone can provide images. You're not just providing orthomosaic. There's software that does all that. You are partnering with them so that they don't make mistakes. They keep their people safe. They're able to do topos. They're able to, in anything, like inventory management, safety inventories, all of these things. You start speaking their language just a little bit. You don't have to be them. You just have to say what's important for them. What outcomes are important for them? Now, if they're building a house or a commercial building, it's staying on time, staying on budget, keeping their people safe, all of these things, and trying to keep it all under wraps, keeping their contractors wound in. All of these things are things they're dealing with on a daily basis. You need to insert yourself and say, here's how I can help with that, and answer those questions. Not once did you necessarily say, I'm using a drone to do that. The drone is just a tool. I'm not going to hire someone that has a really cool hammer to build my house. I'm going to hire someone that knows how to build a house. I don't care what hammer they use. That's another thing that I talked about a little bit this morning. Look, there's tons of different remote sensings. There are remote sensing modalities out there and remote sensing collection devices. Drones are just one of them. There are lots of other pieces and tools, and understanding that from a foundational level will keep people out of they'll keep the guardrails up. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people that are like, man, if I could just get the bigger, biggest, massivest job with the drone, then I'm going to win. No. If someone comes to you with 100,000 acres of drone flying, I would like to think that everyone in this industry would be like, wrong tool. Let me point you to the right one. Or let me provide the right one. That is a better methodology than saying, yeah, I got it. You don't got it. Like, it's not going to work. That is a terrible idea. And all you're doing is giving the rest of the industry a bad name. So it's really understanding the foundations and the fundamentals that are going to help people get higher and higher in their overall knowledge so that they don't make those simple mistakes that people can make all the time. But yeah, the challenging piece, even for the most amazing operator out there, some of the biggest mistakes they make is in that client engagement and getting them to understand that, look, the drone is just a tool. I am just an operator, but the value that the two of us are going to provide to you are all outcome based. And this is a partnership.